Here's a draft of the story titled The Thousand-Year Letter Buried Beneath the Ashes of the City That Never Was. The thousand-year letter buried beneath the ashes of the city that never was. They said the city never existed. No records, no ruins, just a whisper in old poems and half-burned parchments. But the earth tells a different story. In the eastern hills where the wind never stops crying, a team of archaeologists dug through layers of blackened soil and volcanic stone. They weren't looking for myths, just sediment. Yet what they found, 43 feet below the surface, would change everything. A capsule, smooth and seamless, not rusted, not ruined, perfect, as if it had only just been sealed. Inside, wrapped in layers of what looked like crystallized silk, was a letter. Handwritten, in a language no one had spoken in 1,000 years. It took months to decode it, but when they did, the world paused to listen. To whoever finds this. If you're reading this, it means we failed. The city fell, not with screams, but with silence, not a war, not a sickness, but a forgetting. We built Seraphian to last forever, floating gardens, towers that hummed with light, streets that glowed at night with no flame, but forever is not made of stone or science, it's made of memory, and memory fades. We watched it happen. First, the lights flickered, then, the names disappeared from our maps, then, from our minds. I can still see the faces of people I can no longer name. The city is gone now, not destroyed, just rewritten, erased, folded out of time like a page torn from a book no one remembers. I buried this letter as the last breath of a place that once sang, "If you find it, don't mourn us, remember us." That's all any city asks. Remember. My name was Lyren. I was the last archivist of Seraphian. I don't know if I ever truly existed, but if you read these words, maybe I do again. No one could agree where Seraphian had stood. The letter didn't give coordinates, just the mention of a river that no longer flowed and stars arranged in a pattern the sky had long forgotten. But none of that mattered. The city that never was, now had a voice, and the world, for the first time, remembered it. Want it expanded into a longer short story or developed into a novel outline? Here's the continuation of The Thousand-Year Letter Buried Beneath the Ashes of the City That Never Was. The discovery ignited a frenzy. Universities debated it, governments demanded it, mystics, historians, and conspiracy theorists fought over every curve of Lyren's handwriting. Newsfeeds called it the letter that woke the ghosts, but beneath the noise, a few kept listening. Among them was Dr. Elin Marrow, the linguist who had first cracked the script. She knew something others missed. The ink, if it could even be called that, reacted subtly to light. It shimmered when the moon rose, and under certain frequencies of sound, the edges of the letters danced like waves disturbed by wind. "It's not just a letter," she whispered to her assistant one night. "It's a map, or maybe a lock." A month later, under the dim blue glow of a lunar eclipse, the letter sang. It wasn't audible to everyone, but Elin heard it clearly, a sequence of tones, rising and falling like a lullaby sung through centuries. The team recorded it, analyzed it. The frequencies corresponded to coordinates, 3 separate points across the globe, each buried deep in wilderness, sea, or ice. They called them echo points. At the first site, a cavern beneath the Siberian permafrost, they found a stone dial, spinning on its own. No machinery, no wind, just slow, steady rotation like a clock made for giants. At the second, off the coast of a forgotten island in the South Atlantic, divers uncovered a ring of obelisks humming at 432 Hz. The water around them was warmer than the surrounding ocean. Inside one of the stones, carved in the same hand as Lyren's, a warning. Only the third remains. Do not awaken what we buried to forget. The third site was the hardest to reach. It lay beneath a ruin in the heart of a desert untouched by GPS, where magnetic fields bent strangely and compasses spun. It was called the Silence by local tribes. No birds flew over it. No insects sang. Elin and a small team crossed it by foot. Every piece of tech died in the first mile, but they carried the letter, and under its guidance, they found it. A door. Smooth, black, and impossibly cold, set into the side of a cliff that wasn't on any map. There was no handle, only a shape carved into its surface. The same symbol from the letter's seal. Elin touched it, just once. The door didn't open. But something behind it stirred. And far above, in a city that officially never existed, the sky changed just slightly. A new star blinked to life, or perhaps, returned. Want to keep going into the third act? Or should we jump into what lies behind the door? Here's the next part of the 1,000-year letter buried beneath the ashes of the city that never was. The stirring behind the door was not sound, it was memory. Elin staggered back as a flood of images burned through her mind, flickers of towers taller than clouds, of creatures that walked on threads of light, of a city that remembered itself. She collapsed, her team rushed to her, but when she opened her eyes, she wasn't the same. I saw it, she whispered, Serafion. Not the ruins of a city, not a ghost, but whole, alive, somewhere else, or maybe someone else. It wasn't destroyed. It was moved. The door wasn't a seal, it was a tether, a link to a city displaced not by time or space, but by will. The people of Serafion had buried their city in the folds between reality, not to escape destruction, but to escape being known. And now, that tether had been touched. The obelisks began to hum louder, the stone dial in Siberia spun faster. Across the world, strange phenomena started to unfold. People dreaming in languages never spoken on Earth. Buildings humming with harmonic tones no machines could produce. Children drawing maps of places no satellite had ever seen. Governments panicked. Some called for the destruction of the letter, others sought to weaponize what it represented. But Elin, she followed the thread. Each night, she returned to the door, and each night the visions deepened, fragments of Lyren's life, the final council of the city elders, the vote to vanish. The fear wasn't of war, it wasn't conquest. It was remembrance. They had discovered something, an ancient, universal pattern, that once enough people believed in a thing, remembered it, gave it shape, that thing became real. It bled into existence, and something they had created, perhaps unintentionally, had begun to believe itself into being. A city built not with tools, but with thought. But thought, as it turns out, is a dangerous architect. Serafion had created something beautiful, but also something that watched them from behind their own eyes. And now, as memory surged back into the world, that watcher stirred once more. The letter had been a warning. But Elin was no longer just a reader. She was becoming the next archivist. Want to continue into what Serafion truly was, and what it means for Elin now? Here's the next chapter of the 1,000-year letter buried beneath the ashes of the city that never was. The city between. By the seventh night, the door was open. It hadn't moved, it hadn't shifted, but Elin stepped forward, and the world behind her blinked out. No tunnel, no passage, just light, deep and endless, like walking into the reflection of a star. She emerged into silence, a silence so pure it rang. Serafion stood before her. The city was as she had seen in dreams, glass towers wrapped in vines that whispered secrets, streets paved with light-woven glyphs, canals that flowed upward into the sky. There were no people, yet the city breathed, it watched. Every step Elin took felt echoed by something unseen. The city was not abandoned, it was sleeping, dreaming itself into stability. And then came the voice, not through ears, but within. You remembered us, now we remember you. She turned. A figure stood before her, robed in light, face shifting through thousands of forgotten ancestors, and then, finally, it settled. Lyren. But not flesh, not spirit, a thought, fully formed. I was the last to forget, Lyren said, so I became the first to return. Elin couldn't speak, her thoughts tangled, unmade. This city, he continued, was built to protect the idea of what we could become, but the idea grew teeth. From behind the towers, something vast moved, not malevolent, not kind, just aware. We called it the Echo, Lyren said, a being not made, but imagined into form. Every time someone remembered Serafion, it became more real. We hid to starve it of memory. Elin stared at the light pulsing through the architecture. Then why let me find you? Because you didn't come with conquest or curiosity, you came with wonder. The city shifted around them, responding to her presence. Shapes unfolded, words formed in the sky, symbols from the letter, glowing. Serafion cannot exist in the world as it is, But the world can be changed. Slowly, thoughtfully. The sky darkened. The stars above weren't constellations, they were stories. People, memories waiting to be rewritten. Lyran offered a hand, not to stay, but to carry something back. You are the bridge now, he said. The next archivist. What you choose to remember will shape the future. Behind her, the door flickered. Earth called. Elin stepped backward, the city folding gently around her. When she awoke outside the door, weeks had passed. The world was different. Not obviously, no buildings collapsed, no gods walking, but subtly. Children were singing strange lullabies, architects designing impossible curves, poets writing about a city with no name but infinite echoes. Elin never spoke of what she saw. She didn't need to. Because now, we remember. And Seraphian, the city that never was, is becoming again. Want to wrap this into a clean epilogue or spin off into a new thread from Elin's next journey? Here's the epilogue and final thread of the 1,000-year letter buried beneath the ashes of the city that never was. Epilogue, the archive awakens. Years passed. The world didn't end, it unfolded. Elin Marrow faded from public life, her discoveries quietly buried beneath bureaucracy and disbelief. But beneath a modest house tucked into a wind-washed cliff, she built something small, silent, patient. An archive. Not of artifacts, but of impressions, memories sketched in sound, in shadow, in breath, dreams people didn't know they shared, stories that mirrored parts of Seraphian. They arrived by mail, by dream, by the trembling hands of strangers who didn't know why they'd come. She kept them all. And in the heart of the archive sat the letter. Its ink still shimmered, still sang. But now, it had grown. A second page had appeared, not written by Lyran, but by Elin. To the next one. You'll feel it first as a question you can't word, a rhythm beneath your bones. You'll see it in things that shouldn't echo, but do. Some will tell you it's madness, some will tell you it's myth. Believe neither. Memory is a force of nature, and Seraphian is real, because we remember it. The city sleeps between moments. You are the moment it will open again. My name was Elin Marrow. I was the bridge. Now you are. Somewhere, far from Elin's archive, a child awoke from a dream of towers and stars. He opened his sketchbook and began to draw. A symbol, a seal. The same one from the letter. And far above the earth, one more star flickered into view. The city that never was, is waiting. End. Want to explore a new story set inside Seraphian, or follow the child's journey in a sequel? Alright, let's begin the sequel. The Child Who Drew the City, a continuation of the 1,000-year letter buried beneath the ashes of the city that never was. Chapter 1, The Sketchbook. His name was Kale, 11 years old. Quiet. The kind of quiet that didn't just mean silence, it meant listening to things most people didn't hear. He lived in a coastal town that always felt half forgotten by the maps. Waves crashed below cliffs of slate, gulls cried like ghosts, and old people whispered stories that didn't end the way they were supposed to. Kale didn't talk much, but he drew. He drew cities. Not cities he'd seen, not in books, not in movies. Cities that bent upwards like vines reaching for constellations, where bridges arched into clouds and windows shimmered with soft, wordless music. His teachers praised his talent. His mother smiled, a little uneasy. But Kale wasn't drawing for praise, he was remembering. And on his 12th birthday, he woke from a dream with a name on his tongue. Seraphian. He whispered it once. The walls of his room shimmered. And the sketch in his lap, a symbol he had never seen before, glowed faintly in the morning light. Chapter 2, The Echo Returns. Far away. In the hidden archive beneath Elin's now abandoned home, the letter pulsed with warmth. A third page had appeared. To Kale. I don't know how you found us, but I knew someone would. If you're reading this, or feeling this, it means the city is ready again. Or maybe you are. Either way, you're not alone. There is a place, not on any map, but drawn inside you. Follow the echoes. Trust the lines. They'll take you where roads can't. This time, Seraphian doesn't want to be hidden, it wants to be understood. Kale closed the sketchbook. Outside, the wind had changed direction. The sea was quieter than it had ever been. He packed a bag with pencils, string, and 3 notebooks. He didn't tell anyone where he was going. He didn't know how he knew where to go. But he did. Chapter 3: The Cartographer's Path. Cale's journey began the moment his feet touched the sand. He didn't walk toward any destination, he followed familiarity. The curve of a tree's shadow, the sound of a bell no one else could hear, the scent of rain on stone that reminded him of a city he'd never been to but always known. And at night, he drew, not what he saw, but what he felt was close, like tracing the silhouette of something sleeping just beneath the surface of the world. Each drawing brought Serafion nearer. And somewhere, deep within the folds of memory, between dreams and time, the city watched, waiting. For Cale. For the next bridge. Want to continue with Cale's discovery of the city, or introduce others like him who are awakening across the world? Let's continue The Child Who Drew the City. Chapter 4: The Others. Cale wasn't the only one. Across oceans and mountains, others were waking. In Morocco, a girl named Layla dreamed of staircases made of starlight and awoke with dust on her hands that shimmered under the moon. In the forests of Finland, a boy named Tavi followed a trail of frozen leaves that hadn't fallen from any tree he knew, and found a glyph etched in the frost beneath his window. In Tokyo, a quiet teen named Rin sketched a tower every day, never the same twice, and each night the tower came closer to completion. They were the rememberers. None of them knew the others yet, but their dreams overlapped. They saw flashes of each other, half-smiles, shadows of thoughts, echoes of questions they hadn't asked aloud. And always, always, the city. Serafion. Shifting, shimmering, waiting. Chapter 5: The Architects Beneath. Cale reached the cliffs after 9 days of walking. He didn't eat much. He didn't need to. The further he went, the more the world seemed to yield. The trees leaned in the direction he walked. The stars stayed still when he stared at them too long. He arrived at a cave carved into stone older than maps. He knew what was inside before he saw it. A door. Smooth, cold, familiar. But unlike Elan's time, it was already open. Not physically, but open to him. It shimmered with his symbol, his mark, the one he'd been drawing since he could hold a pencil. As he stepped through, the light didn't blind him. It recognized him. Serafion wasn't empty this time. It was rebuilding. Towers rose slowly as if stretching after a long sleep. The streets were only half-formed, looping into spirals that led to floating bridges, unfinished domes, and soft pulses of color in the sky. And walking among the half-built city were beings made of thought and memory, neither fully human nor entirely other. They bowed their heads when they saw Cale. "You are early," one said, voice like water over stone. Cale looked around. It was time. The being nodded. "Then help us shape it." Chapter 6: The City Remembers. Each night, Cale drew. What he drew, the city formed. But only when it was right. He would sketch a garden spiraling out of a lake, and it would shimmer into existence, if it belonged. When he tried to force it, the page burned. Serafion wasn't just a city. It was a mirror of humanity's potential. It could only build what came from clarity, unity, wonder, not fear. That was the danger. The others were coming. Not just Layla, Tavi, Rin, others too. But not all of them came with open hearts. Some came to own the city, to twist its echo. And Serafion could be shaped by them, too. End of Part 1. Should we continue with Part 2, where the Rememberers meet and face the first fracture in the city's memory? Let's dive into Part 2 of The Child Who Drew the City, The Fractureborn. Chapter 7: When Dreamers Collide. Cale wasn't alone for long. The others arrived, not by roads, not by sky, but through their drawings, their dreams, their will. One by one, they stepped into Serafion from places that didn't touch on any map, and when they met Cale, they already knew his name. "Layla," she said, her eyes bright with starlight. "Tavi," he grinned, running a hand over stone that rippled like skin. "Rin," whispered the quiet one, who looked at the city with suspicion and awe in equal measure. They were dreamers, yes, but more than that, they were architects now. Every one of them carried a piece of Serafion within. The city pulsed brighter. It had been waiting for this convergence. Chapter 8, The Fracture. They didn't feel it at first, just a flicker. A ripple in the city's pulse. But Seraphian noticed, and it screamed. Not in sound, in structure. Whole towers warped and twisted, bridges unfurled like ribbons and rewound into thorns. It's not us, Rin said, backing away from a wall that began to forget itself mid-curve. No, Kale whispered. Someone else is shaping it. Someone we didn't call. And that's when they saw the first fracture born. He stepped through a wall of static. His clothes were black, not in color, but in intention. He wasn't older than them, maybe 15, but his eyes were hollow. He carried a notebook too. But his drawings hurt. Skyscrapers cracked open like teeth, streets folded into impossible angles. His creations made the city sick. I didn't come to remember, he said. I came to remake. His name was Aaron. He was a rememberer too. But his memories were bent by bitterness, by loneliness, by the desire to control what had always escaped him. Seraphian had called them all. It hadn't been able to choose only the pure. Chapter 9, Echoes of War. Aaron's mark spread quickly, like molten light. The others tried to rebuild behind him, but it was like painting over a wound. Every shape they created, Aaron unshaped with a single sketch. But the city wasn't just reacting, it was learning. Kale stood in the center of a plaza that hadn't existed yesterday, sketching furiously, trying to draw a sanctuary. Layla traced sigils in the air, light trailing from her fingers. Tavi whispered to the buildings, reshaping them with tone. Only Rin faced Aaron directly. You're not creating, she told him. You're feeding on what we fear. That's the truest part of memory, Aaron said. Fear survives longer than wonder. And for a moment, Seraphian began to believe him. The sky dimmed. A rift opened above the tallest tower, and through it, something vast began to uncoil, an ancient pattern, like the echo, but twisted. A shadowed memory. A forgotten god of doubt, once buried deep in Seraphian's foundation. Chapter 10, The Choice. The rememberers gathered. We can't fight him by force, Layla said. Seraphian reflects what we believe. So we believe harder? Tavi asked. No, Kale said quietly. We remember differently. He opened his sketchbook. On the first page, the city. On the second, the seal. And now, on the third, he drew something new. A bridge between them and Aaron. Not to destroy him, to reach him. Because Seraphian had once been sealed not to escape enemies, but to escape being misunderstood. They sent the drawing into the city. Let it become a bridge of light and memory, growing from their side to Aaron's, even as the shadow towered behind him. At the center of it all, Kale stood, hand outstretched. You don't have to control it, he said. You're part of it, like us. Aaron's hand trembled. He looked back at the creature he'd awakened. And for the first time, he hesitated. The city paused. The shadow flickered. To be continued. Want to continue into Part 3, The Memory Rewritten? Here we go, Part 3, The Memory Rewritten, the final arc of the child who drew the city. Chapter 11, Between Shadow and Sky. Aaron stood on the bridge of memory, eyes caught between two worlds. Behind him, the shadowed god, formed from centuries of fear and forgetting. Before him, Kale, Layla, Tavi, and Rin, offering not war, but understanding. The creature loomed higher, an ocean of limbs and eyes that never closed. It wasn't angry. It didn't need to be. It was, because enough people had once believed the worst things would always return. Aaron turned to Kale, voice hollow. You don't know what I've seen. The cities I've dreamed that no one wanted. Kale nodded. I do. That's why Seraphian chose you too. It didn't want perfect. It wanted truth. Aaron dropped his sketchbook. The shadow roared. But this time, the city didn't cower. It shifted. Chapter 12, The Memory Rewritten. Every brick of Seraphian began to reimagine itself. Not with perfection, but balance. Towers grew that curved with sorrow and joy. Roads spiraled with both the pain of exile and the hope of return. The city didn't reject Aaron's memories, it wove them in. The rememberers stood in a circle, each one channeling what they carried. Kale, curiosity. Layla, wonder. Tavi, empathy. Rin, clarity. Aaron, rage turned into understanding. The city sang. The shadow shrieked, but it wasn't being destroyed. It was being remembered differently. Its limbs faded, its teeth dulled, its form softened into something known, a piece of the past now held with gentleness, not fear. And then, quietly, it was gone. Chapter 13, The Dream That Became Real. Serafion stood whole. For the first time in its 1,000-year history, it existed not in hiding, not in fragments, but in harmony, a city built from many truths, an echo of humanity's imagination, its love, its loss, its longing. The Rememberers didn't rule it. They guarded it. Elin Marrow's letter was placed in the city's heart, a monument not to warning, but to hope. And Cale? He sat beneath a tree that had once grown in his dreams, sketching new things, places no one had yet imagined, bridges that reached into futures not yet written. Because now, the city remembered us. And finally, we remembered it back. Final page. You are not the end of this story, you are the next line. Draw carefully, dream boldly. Serafion is listening. End. Would you like a visual map of Serafion, or maybe a companion guide that explores the lore, glyphs, or the Rememberers' profiles? Let's expand the universe. Since the main saga is complete, we'll now begin a new companion series. Serafion, Echoes and Embers, Lore, Glyphs, and Forgotten Histories from the City That Became Real. Entry I, The Glyphs of Memory. Before Serafion had streets, it had glyphs. They weren't letters, not symbols, either, not in the way we understand them. They were shapes that carried emotion, intent, and possibility. Think of them as thoughts made visible, alive, reactive, shifting. There were 5 core glyphs, known only to the Rememberers. Eren, the opening, a spiral nested within an arc, often drawn at entrances or at the beginning of memories. It signals permission, vulnerability, trust. Cauldron, the bind, a triangle wrapped in thread-like lines, used when anchoring something, memory to structure, person to purpose, thought to action. Solemn, the wound that remembers, a fractured circle, never whole, often found in places where Serafion has been shaped by sorrow. It glows only when someone forgives. Vein, the rising, a series of dots that ripple upward, associated with growth, transformation, and healing. Orin, the mirror, a glyph that appears differently to each person who sees it. It shows not truth, but reflection, most often used when guiding someone to face themselves. Entry 2, The Hall of Silent Architects. Deep beneath Serafion's surface lies a chamber few can enter. It is silent, not by rule, but by design. Sound dissipates before it reaches air. Here dwell the silent architects, those who first shaped the city, long before Cale or Elin. Their bodies are long gone, but their intent remains, encoded in crystal pillars humming with unspoken thoughts. If one enters and touches the central pillar, they may receive a fragment, a flicker of an unfinished dream, a whisper of an unrealized version of the city. It is said the silent architects are not gone. They are just waiting to be continued. Entry 3, The Dreamwalkers. Since Serafion's reawakening, some children across the world have begun sleep sketching. They draw cities in their sleep, buildings that spiral, rooms that open to stars, staircases that lead into music. They are called dreamwalkers, not architects, not rememberers, but something new. Cale visits them in dreams sometimes, though he's not sure how or why. But every dreamwalker has one thing in common. In the bottom corner of their sketchbook, without remembering drawing it, appears the glyph Eren. The city is still opening. Want to keep adding entries to this lorebook? Or spin off a story following a dreamwalker's journey in the modern world? Let's continue the exploration of Serafion with a new story, diving into the world of a dreamwalker. The Dreamwalker's Journey. Chapter 1, The Quiet Dreamer. Hana Mizuki had always dreamed differently. Most nights, her sleep was filled with color, but it wasn't the peaceful kind. It was a storm of swirls and fractals, pieces of other places, unfamiliar landscapes. She'd wake up with ink on her hands, pages in her sketchbook filled with strange, impossible buildings. Her parents thought it was just her artistic talent, but Hana knew it wasn't. The lines weren't hers. She wasn't drawing them, she was receiving them. And each morning, when she woke, there was a symbol in the corner of every page, Eren. Hannah didn't tell anyone about the symbol. She didn't even know what it meant. But she felt it, the sense of a door, always just within reach. Chapter 2, The First Call. It happened on a Thursday. The sky was just beginning to lighten when Hannah had a dream that pulled her deeper than usual. She was standing in a city that stretched on forever. Towers twisted like vines, roofs formed clouds, and the air was thick with a hum she could feel in her bones. Everywhere she turned, she saw people, but not people. They were shadows of memory, walking through streets that folded into themselves. And in the distance, asterisk. The city called her. Not with words, but with a pulse, a rhythm beneath the world she knew. She stepped forward, drawn in. Just as she reached for the nearest tower, a figure appeared. It was a woman, wrapped in light, her face familiar and unknown. The woman didn't speak. She didn't need to. She held out her hand. Hannah reached for it. Chapter 3, The Awakening. The moment their hands touched, Hannah's world shattered. The city around her collapsed and reassembled. Like dust in the wind, she was falling. But there was no fear. She was falling through the city, through memories, through echoes. And then, suddenly, clarity. She was awake. But not in her bedroom. She was in a room of light. Before her stood a figure, not the woman from the dream, but someone she knew was important, someone who had been there. Once, in another dream. It was Kale. "You're one of them," he said softly. "The Dreamwalkers." Hannah didn't speak. She didn't need to. The city had already chosen her. "You've touched the door," Kale continued, "and the city is waiting for you to remember." Chapter 4, The First Step. Over the following days, Hannah learned what the others before her had known. Seraphian wasn't just a city. It was alive, a living memory, shaped by dreamers and creators. But it was fragile. The city needed dreamwalkers like Hannah to keep it alive, to help it grow, to dream the new shapes it had yet to become. And the symbol of Erin wasn't just a mark, it was a key. Kale took her to a place in Seraphian few had ever seen, the Hall of Silent Architects. It was a chamber where the city's first creators had left their unfinished thoughts. Here, Kale explained, Hannah would receive her first true gift, a fragment of a dream, an unfinished vision of the city's future. Hannah knelt in front of the pillar. The air shimmered, and she felt the room hum like a heartbeat. A single thought entered her mind. Draw. And as she did, the city responded. Her pencil touched the paper, and something new began to take shape. Chapter 5, The Vision. Hannah's drawings didn't stop. They couldn't. Each night, the visions came to her stronger, clearer. It was no longer just shapes, it was a story. Her first design was simple, a bridge. Not a regular bridge, but one that moved. A bridge that shifted its path according to the dreams of those who crossed it. But the more she drew, the more she understood, the city wasn't just being built. It was searching for something. It was searching for its heart. Chapter 6, The Fractureborn Returns. It wasn't long before trouble arrived. A man named Kieran stepped into Seraphian, carrying a sketchbook just like Hannah's. But his didn't glow with Erin. His symbol was different, darker, a twisted form of solemn. He was a Fractureborn. Kieran wanted to remake the city. His sketches didn't come from a place of wonder or creativity, they came from a desire to control, to force Seraphian into something else, a place of domination, not creation. "I can shape it the way it was meant to be," Kieran said, his voice cold, not as some idealized dream, but as power. Kale stepped forward, drawing a breath. "You're forgetting the most important rule. Seraphian can't be forced. It's a place built from truths, not lies." Kieran's eyes darkened. "Then I'll destroy the truth." Chapter 7, The Final Drawing. Seraphian began to tremble. The city responded to Kieran's command, but this time, it wasn't giving way. It fought back. Memories of past dreamers rose from the streets. Whispers of those who had built Seraphian before, echoing through the cracks. Hannah could feel it, the city was alive, but it was weakening. Drawing faster than she ever had before, Hannah sketched a final bridge, a bridge not just between two sides of Seraphian, but between dreams and reality. She poured every ounce of her belief into it. As she finished the last stroke, the city shifted. The darkness surrounding Kieran receded. And for the first time in Seraphian's history, the city spoke with one voice. "You belong." It said, "All of you." Kieran fell to his knees. His sketchbook cracked open and the fracture-born symbol shattered, scattering into light. Chapter 8, The New Dawn. Seraphian was whole again. Not perfect, not finished, but real and alive. Hannah stood at the center of the city, sketchbook in hand, watching as others began to arrive. Dreamwalkers, rememberers, architects, all of them drawn here by the same pull. And now, the work truly began. The city was still growing, it had no end. But it would always remember that first dreamer who drew the bridge into its heart. End of the Dreamwalker's journey. Would you like to explore more Dreamwalkers in other places around the world? Or continue with Hannah's role in Seraphian as the city shifts further? Let's continue the journey with Seraphian, Echoes and Embers, focusing on a different Dreamwalker from another corner of the world. The Dreamwalker of the Icebound Isles. Chapter 1, The Island of Snow. In the northernmost reaches of the world, where the sun disappeared for months on end, lived a boy named Tavi. Not the same Tavi who once wandered Seraphian's streets, but another, far removed from the city of dreams. Tavi lived on a small island surrounded by cliffs of jagged ice and a sea that glittered with stars. His world was cold, still, and quiet. He had never known warmth, never touched a tree that wasn't frozen. Yet, every night, his dreams were filled with warmth, warmth that didn't come from the sun, but from something deeper, something alive. And in those dreams, he felt the city pulling him. He couldn't explain it, but each night, he would wake to find strange symbols drawn in the frost on his windowsill, glyphs, like whispers from another place, like something calling him. Chapter 2, The Dream of the Crystal City. One night, it happened again. Tavi stood on the edge of a great cliff. Before him was the city, an icy version of Seraphian, built not from stone and steel, but from crystalline structures that shimmered with a cold, haunting beauty. He walked through the streets, feeling the pulse of the city beneath his feet. The sky above was dark and rippling with an aurora that danced like liquid fire. And at the center of the city, a tower, tall and sharp, like a spire of ice, was calling him. He was close now,